Part 4. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 31. Although the father-in-law was puzzled, he was clever and didn't ask much. He just wrote down the 3 girls of Luo Shang's heart in his heart. After all, His Majesty can ask his own personal questions. The former unknown girl was the first, and the 3rd girl of the Luo Shang book was the second. It was too rare for Su Gong to pay attention to. The front line of military information is now sent by Dock City. This Chang Shijia, who was suppressed by the Ming family for a lifetime, probably wants to perform in this battle. Yuandi can also feel Chang Shijia when he sees these memorials sent by him. McQuan rubbed his hands and waited for Ming Lan to hang out. As for the front-line Ming family, Yuandi really didn't see any of them. In fact, guessing can also guess that it is Chang Shijia who has pushed down the discounts. Emperor Yuan was so confused and sent Chang Shijia to Dock City that he was thinking of not giving the Ming family a little retreat. He not only had to take back the political power, but also the military power. The Ming family army was mainly based on the Ming family. Instead of keeping the Ming family army in trouble in the future, it would be better to remove it all at once. These days, although the mood is very good, after all, there is no dust settled, Yuandi's heart is still a little hesitant. When the night is quiet, when he can't sleep, he sits up and sits in front of the couch, looking at the chessboard in a daze. The sunspots and whites are neatly covered with the chessboard. If you look closely, you will find that there is one less sunspot on the chessboard. He made people rummage throughout the Zhongzheng temple and couldn't find the missing sunspot. Like the dagger that sent her to him, he could not find it in the bandits' den. In the future, she came to the palace and saw that these old things were not there. Putting pieces of chess pieces carefully into the chess box, Yuandi's eyes fell on the wishing lamp next to the chessboard. He wrote the words Qiutai Minan on the wishing lamp. What he didn't expect was that her wish on it was also Qiutai Minan. Her character Long Fei Fenwu is vigorous and powerful, not at all like a woman's character. He looked at her, and there was a kind of joy and regret to see his confidant. If she is a man, he must help her in Chaotang and do a great job for him in this prosperous world. Unfortunately, she is not. She was just a woman, and he could only give her the favor of the harem. There was a hurry of footsteps outside the door. Su Gongsu seemed to say something to someone, and then quietly pushed in. It seemed that he did not expect Yuandi to fall asleep. Su Gongdu took a moment's notice, busy walking to the bed, and said, "Your Majesty, Bianguan urgent report." "So late?" Yuandi was stunned, thinking that it was Chang Shijia's old guy who hadn't achieved enough and failed, and even Dock City hadn't kept it, and he looked busy. "Some people come in." Su Gong personally went to the opener and invited people in. The person who came in was not a messenger. He was a soldier. His body was mixed with blood and mud. He could barely see his original appearance. Yuandi saw him like this, his heart was falling like a stone, and Chang Shijia's old thing, if he couldn't even hold Dock City, he must kill the guy's 9 families. Song Wei walked to the bed in a few steps, but he couldn't hang up any more. He wanted to kneel and bow down, but threw himself in front of Yuandi's feet. He had blood bubbles in his mouth, and didn't eat for 3 days and nights. The words were unclear, and he just murmured, "Your Majesty, the general is desperate, and even if he dies, he must deliver the letter to His Majesty." He reached out, tremblingly touched his arms, and the blood-stained packages in his arms were held in his hands. He was so weak that he could only lie on the ground, trying to remove the packages one after another. Su Gong wanted to help him, but he seemed to have only one breath left, and as soon as he reached out, he threw a puppet pushed by the nearby Su Gong to the ground. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 32. Song Wei's voice was weak, but he was extremely firm. The general ordered him to be a contempt, and even if he died, he had to hand the letter to His Majesty. The parcel was wrapped in several layers, and he opened it layer by layer, finally revealing the whole picture of the letter. The wrapping cloth was blood-stained black and red, and even the envelopes were soaked with blood, but even so, Yuandi saw the seal on the letter at a glance. That was the seal of General Ming Ho Ming from Zhenbei. This is not a letter sent by Chang Shija. In other words, there was nothing wrong with Dock City, and everything was still under control. He did want to destroy Ming Lan and the Ming family army, but he did not want to lose his own land. As long as the Ming family army couldn't hold Feng Cheng, the Dock City's army would immediately go up and bring Feng Cheng back, taken back by the barbarian. Yuandi felt relieved at this moment. But the next moment, Emperor Yuan was extremely angry. Chang Shija was stationed in Dock City. Ming Lan, the man, could still send a letter to the capital. A scourge threatening Jiangshan's community. Song Wei held the letter in both hands, tremblingly handed to Yuandi, but Yuandi did not immediately bend over to pick it up. He looked coldly at the wounded soldier. Zhenbei Ho wrote to him at this time. Did he want to surrender to him? Or is it crying and crying wrong? Maybe, Ming Lan, this rude man, will still scold him in the letter. The father-in-law of Su, who was on the side, rushed forward again to receive the letter from Song Wei. Song Wei looked up sternly and stared at him fiercely. There was a great idea that Su Gong would take another step closer, and he would break people into pieces. He was so hard-hearted that father-in-law Su took a step back, and smiled and said to Song Wei, "Let this letter be passed on to our family. After all, who knows if the envelope is poisonous or not, you must check it before looking at it." Yuandi narrowed his eyes to this stubborn soldier with an interest, but he still had a sigh of relief, but he could still have the pride of the soldier. He didn't want to see it, but he was quite appreciative of the soldier, so he bent over to take over the letter. The letter was heavy, and it contained more than stationery. Yuandi squeezed his eyes, and raised his eyebrows in surprise. If he guessed well, the envelope contained stuff such as soldiers' amulets. This is not possible. Will it be a tiger charm of Zhenbei? Ho Minglan of Zhenbei would be willing to hand over the tiger charm to him. If the Zhenbei Ho had intended to hand over the tiger amulet, where would he take this approach? Yuandi himself was unbelieving. He opened the envelope, and a letter paper, a smaller envelope, and a tiger charm fell out of it. Zhenbei Ho is in charge of the tiger charm of 100,000 troops. Yuandi picked up the tiger charm and played with it. Brow raised slightly, an incredible flash of light flashed in his eyes. This is a real tiger charm, yes. However, at this time, Zhenbei gave it to him. Is it too late? Yuandi picked up the stationery on the chessboard and opened it. This is not the Zhenbei Ho's handwriting on those orchestras. The handwritings on those orchestras are gentle and ritual. I want to come to those who belong to Zhenbei are written by people. The words in front of them were vigorous and powerful, and the words were strong and free. Yuandi even saw a bit of majestic momentum from this handwriting. And the handwriting made him faintly familiar. Seems to have seen in general. He didn't think about it for a moment, just glanced at the contents of the letter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 33. Ho Minglan Chi, Chen Zhen North. Before Chen Chen's father died, Zheng Dingchen gave the tiger amulet to His Majesty. Ding Chen returned to Beijing after his death and became a peaceful son-in-law. At that time, he was unwilling. Chen didn't want to be a brother-in-law waiting for death. Chen wanted to settle the border for His Majesty, and let His Majesty sit in the high hall without worry. The minister wanted this pass. As long as the Ming family was present, the barbarians would be afraid to commit crimes. Your Majesty, did the minister do something wrong? His Majesty is a monarch, and a minister is a minister. The monarch wants to die, and the minister has to die. His Majesty, however, died on the battlefield and died well. They are thinking about returning to their hometown and reuniting with their loved ones. Their loved ones are waiting at the gate of the city every day, waiting for Erlang to return home. Your Majesty, and your presence, there will be no barbarians dare to step further. When Ketchen was away, could His Majesty bring those Erlangs back home? The tiger charm was in hand, and the army of 100,000 Ming families listened to His Majesty's order. Your Majesty, the minister will hand over the Ming family army to you, and I hope you will bring them home. Long live your Majesty. Yuandi squeezed a thin sheet of paper, his lips clenched tightly, and remained motionless for a long time. Songwei on the ground finally couldn't support the fainting. Yuandi was awakened by the sound and asked Su Gongfu, "Take him down and let the doctor see." Su Gong nodded, summoned the palace people to come in, and carefully carried Songwei out. Yuandi's eyes moved, and afterwards he fell on the piece of paper written by Yan Ji in the wishing lamp, and the 4 characters Feng Kuomanen of Long Fei Feng Wu looked so dazzling. He shook his head a little, and suddenly seemed to notice something, his eyes fixed on those 4 words. He finally knew why looking at Ming Yan's handwriting was familiar, and it was exactly the same as that of 3 girls of the Luo family. He compared the 2 sheets of paper together, not even seeing a trace of imitation. These 2 were engaged from an early age. The characters of the 3 girls Su Luo were taught by Ming Lan himself. Thinking that the 3 girls of the Luo family had said that they had a good relationship with Ming Lan, Yuandi's heart soured and spread a little bit, and gradually became angry. At this time Ming Lan handed the tiger amulet to him, and he said so in the letter, using the 100,000 Ming army to seduce him to Fengcheng, so as to capture a thief and a king. Yuan Emperor's face was gloomy, swiping his hands, sweeping all the letters on his hands to the ground. Ding-ling made a sound, and Yuandi glanced away, and saw a black falling out of the small envelope that had not been sealed. The chess piece slumped on the ground, and the sound of rolling into Yuandi's ears made his brain buzz at this moment, and suddenly he couldn't think. The next moment, he squatted down quickly to pick up the small envelope and pulled out 2 large pages of stationery from it. Pray. The text often says, typing was originally set by the generals. Generals are not allowed to see typing. In this case, I believe it. My father didn't allow me to be a general, but all I really wanted was to be a general who defended the country and defended the country. I was born in the border gate, longer than the border gate. My childhood dream was to make the border gate people free from barbarians. I am not afraid of death, I am too scared to die. I didn't want to write this letter to you anymore. I know your situation, you know where you are, and where you are. I will make the same choices as you. But, please, I still can't help writing this letter. I don't know if it will get into your hands, I don't know if you will see it, and I don't know how you will react when you see it. I even faintly hope that you will never see it in your life. But I still hope that you can see it when everything is possible. Praying, I'm pregnant. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 34. Pray, you ask me where those injuries came from. Those injuries are the ones I leave after every battle, and every scar is my glory. My soldiers, like me, are all scarred and full of glory. They look forward to going home after the war and reuniting with their families. I also look forward to it, and look forward to someone who can pick me up and the children home. I still can't believe that you are the one in the high hall. I couldn't believe it, I would like an emperor someday. I like you, that kind of love, I have never been to others in my whole life. This is a weird feeling. If you are an ordinary man, I'll take you home regardless of your wishes and continue this love of you for a lifetime. But you are the emperor, and there are countless women around you, maybe to me, you are one of those countless women. From the moment I knew your identity, I stopped expecting anything from you, but now, I look forward to, and expect you to give up the Emperor's insistence for a woman after seeing this letter. Praying, the child in his belly, more than 3 months, he and I fight against the enemy on the battlefield, accompanied me day and night, he followed me through the battle of life and death. When I knew it, he had lived in my belly for 3 months. Uncle Song said he was healthy. He is very healthy, pray, this is me and your child, he is very healthy. You may have countless children, but I may only have this one in my life. I really want to keep him healthy for a lifetime, I really want him to have been and can always live healthy. I am a general. The king wants to die, and the minister has to die. However, I will also be a mother. I touched him in the belly and thought about what he would look like when he was born. Would he look like you, would he look like me? I look forward to him being a boy so he can do everything I can't. Pray for my life, deserving the world, the people, and the king. The only thing I feel guilty about is the child in my stomach. I never asked for help. Even my father and master, I never knelt on them. In this life, I just kneel past you. Praying, I knelt down on the ground, writing this letter. Pray, please. I know you are not easy, I know you may like me, far from being able to let you give up your persistence. Praying, but the child in my belly, his only hope now is with you. I, too, can only ask you. Pray, I will take the troops out of the city to the barbarian base camp for sneak attacks. If I am fortunate to return, I hope to see you. If I have any accidents, I only hope that this letter will never be delivered to you. Song of Songs. Here is her handwriting, this is a letter she wrote to herself. On 2 large pages, she spoke humbly and earnestly, whispering, word by word, begging him. The night before her parting appeared to him, kneeling on the ground, kneeling in front of him, clutching his sleeves, raising his head slightly, tears in his eyes, and a look of love and hate for him. His hands were shaking, not only his hands were shaking, he was shaking all over. His throat was blocked and he opened his mouth several times, unable to make a sound. How is it possible, how is it possible? He couldn't associate her with Genbeiho at all, but thought of her talking, thinking of her words and deeds, he couldn't help but believe. How could this be? How could she be Genbeiho Minglan? His eyes were dark, and he was even a little unsteady. Or did the father-in-law arrange Song Wei to enter the door, seeing Yuandi like this, busy approaching and supporting Yuandi, Your Majesty, what is wrong with you? Yuandi grabbed Sugong's wrist with his backhand. His strength was so large, as if he had grasped a life-saving straw and squeezed it tightly. Zhao Luo's 3 girls entered the palace. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 35. Seeing Sugong surprised, Yuandi's impatient voice aggravated, immediately, let the 3 girls of the Luo family enter the palace, as fast as possible. At midnight, someone took the emperor's token to break through the gates of Judeo Palace, and quickly went to Luo Shang Shufu. Yuandi could not wait for a moment. After a brief confusion in his head, he immediately asked Sugong where he had arranged Song Wei. He personally went to the compartment to visit Song Wei. Song Wei had many wounds on his body. He seemed to have gone through several battles. He was still in a coma at the moment, and the doctor was cleaning the wounds for him. The wounds were rotten and stinky, and it was terrible. Any way to wake him up, I have something to ask him. Yuandi looked at the dense and valgus wounds on Song Wei's body. At this moment, his heart felt like he had swallowed countless ice dregs and was suffering. Is she so scarred? The doctor got the order and was busy arranging a few needles in Song Wei's body. Song Wei woke up warily, and his hoarse voice shouted, I have an urgent report to your majesty, let it go, let it go. He probably thought he was still there. The words of the people around the palace were moving, and they were in awe of the soldiers in front of them. Hey here, when did you leave Feng Cheng? When you left, how much food was there in the city? How many soldiers and horses were there? Song Wei stared at Emperor Yuan with bright eyes. His Majesty, Your Majesty, Feng Cheng's grain is out. He asked His Majesty to send reinforcements to Feng Cheng, and the general of Wuchen could not help Feng Cheng to death. He said a few words, his mouth was cracked, and his mouth was full of blood immediately, but instead of stopping, he struggled to get up and salute. Your Majesty, General Ming did not collude with the barbarians. This is a rumor. Don't listen to these nonsense. General Ming is devoted to the people. She never has any antipathy. He said here. Suddenly tears were falling like rain. The soldiers are fighting in the border, everyone is trying to keep Feng Cheng, but they are all on the way to Beijing, and everyone along the way is discussing that the general has treason. They will never be treasonous, and the soldiers will not be treasonous. Everybody just wants to keep Feng Cheng. Yuandi took a step forward and squeezed his outstretched hand to signal him not to move. When did you set out and how long did you leave, and Feng Cheng's condition, you and the uncle detailed. Su Gong entered the door lightly and whispered something in Yuandi's ear. Yuandi immediately said to Song Wei, who couldn't even speak, you take a break first, and then ask you for a while. He got up and left, but Song Wei suddenly shouted as if returning to the light, Your Majesty, there is still something to say about the humble job. The people around the palace looked away, and then looked at Yuandi with an imploring look. Song Wei had something to say to Yuandi alone. Yuandi anxiously went to see the so-called Mrs. Luo-san. As seen from Song Wei, he stopped and waved his hands, and all the people in the palace retreated. Your Majesty, there is no male in this generation of Ming family. Ming Lan is a daughter. I grew up with her since I was a child. I guarantee my life. They colluded. Your Majesty, what I said was true. If there was a rash statement, it would thunder and thunder. Song Wei knew that his remarks were too incredible, let alone His Majesty. Even those Ming family soldiers who followed Ming Lan might not believe him, but now, even if there is little hope of washing Bai Lan, willing to give up like that? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 36. These words have used all the power of Song Wei, and his words fainted again. Yuan Emperor seemed to be staring at Song Wei, but his eyes did not have a focal length. His hands were tightly squeezed and loosened. Turn around and stride out. Lady Luo-san is waiting in the hall. When Yuandi entered the door, she saw a woman in the form of Ting Ting Juna kneeling on the ground. Even if it was only a back view, she could see that the woman was weak and delicate like Lu Fuifeng. Yuandi stepped into the door. Just a back view, he knew that the woman in front of her was not a song. The three girls of the Luo family are not words at all. The woman he was thinking of was the one he wanted to kill. He worked so hard to plan for so long that the fruits of victory were near, but now, the fruits he can get are not what he wants. Yuandi was chilling all over. The last bit of hope was broken, and it seemed that he had fallen into the heart of the abyss. At this moment, it seemed that he could not see the light at all. The Emperor is here. The singing of Su Gong made the woman kneeling on the ground turn around and salute the Emperor, Your Majesty Wanan. Yuandi still stood at the door. He didn't move and didn't set his eyes on the woman. He wanted to deceive himself, but the voice of a woman would also pass into his ears. This voice and the voice of the singing song were exactly the two extremes of the opposite. His teeth clenched, his lips clenched tightly together, and the next moment, as if suddenly reacting, he strode out of the door. Sitting at the table, they wrote a series of memorials to send the palace people to the official residences the next day. Yuandi ordered his own guards and took Song Wei to the border gate overnight. The letter she wrote was placed on his chest, and from time to time, he reached out and touched it. His hands were so cold that he could touch his chest, and he felt that the blood was boiling. Is she Ming Lan? Is she General Zhen Beiho? Is she praying for him in Fengcheng? So many doubts, so many mistrusts, so many things have not been finally confirmed. For the first half of his life, most things were a gamble, winning was the world, losing was nothing. He has 12 points of confidence in every gamble. But this time, he wasn't sure. He wasn't sure if she was really Ming Lan, or even knowing what to wait for him on this trip so light and easy. Without a half point of certainty, he looked back. The wind screamed in his ears, but his eyebrows grew increasingly narrow. For 3 days and nights, several horses ran all the way. When he got to Dock City, when he got off the horse, Yuandi's legs trembled and he almost fell and fell. Now riding the horse day and night, the guards on the side wanted to help him, but he stopped him with a look. He was nothing more than a horse riding for 3 days. What about her, a woman? She has been guarding the border for so long, how did she survive? At the border, Yuan Emperor first seized Chang Shiji's military power with a thunderbolt, and set off for Fengcheng overnight. This was his first royal drive and his first time on the battlefield. When he was young, he had fantasized that the army would calm down the world, but now, there are endless horseshoe sounds all around, but his chest is calm without any trace of ripples. There is no excitement to build a successful career, no enthusiasm for going to the battlefield. At this moment, he was calling her name over and over again in his heart. Yanj, I bet on this world, just ask you, wait. Chicken, Wood, I think this powerful person seems to like you, do you want to run him away? Yanji narrowed his eyes, you also said, he just likes me, what this kind of man wants him to do, people are in love with each other, deformed. The person I am in love with, I have no requirements on him, the most basic thing is that he has to be a tree. Chicken, you may be old alone. A certain beast, hey, the human tree can't, the beast tree can, come and come, let me eat you. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 37. At Fengcheng, dead bodies were everywhere. It didn't seem to expect that reinforcements would come. Those soldiers who were numb and stiffened with blood were screaming and shouting after a brief sting. The soldiers and horses brought by Emperor Yuan were like a fresh blood source injected into this deadly Fengcheng, which made this dying Fengcheng suddenly live. With the words His Majesty's proposal, even the dying soldier was inspired to climb back from death. Where is General Ming? The guard next to Yuandi asked loudly, where is General Ming? The soldiers finally reacted and shouted, Your Majesty, save the general quickly, the general is still outside the gate. Yanj led a pair of men and horses to attack the barbarians' base camp, and was chased by the barbarian soldiers and horses from the beginning of the city. The team of them took a day's rations, and finally managed to destroy the chaser behind the guerrilla war and ran to the old man's nest. The leader of the barbarian thought that he would be informed to withdraw his troops. He did not expect that this trance broke the pot instead of a troop. Instead of withdrawing troops, he launched a more rapid attack on Fengcheng. The new leader of the barbarian is also a man with great tactics, knowing that it is useless even to go back, but once Fengcheng is laid down, he can use Fengcheng as a boundary and set a natural barrier for himself, and rest easy. Yanj led his team to the outside of the moat under the gate of Fengcheng. Although the urgent need of Fengcheng was temporarily solved, a new problem appeared. The leader of the barbarian wanted to use them to break the gates. The gates were not open, and the barbarians would occasionally put arrows at them and insulted them, but once the wooden bridge of the moat had a tendency to lower, these barbarians would immediately approach the moat. Yanj and his small team have been insisting on 1 day and 1 night. 20 people left the city for 5 days, and now there are only 2 left. The barbarians didn't want to kill them all, especially her general. I have to say that the barbarian plan is very good. Yanj feels he can't hold it anymore. She and her companions had a lot of arrows in them. Her dead teammates all pressed on her, trying to protect her with a wall. But she couldn't hold it anymore. The knife and arrow on her body were not injured. The most serious injury was the chest. An arrow almost penetrated her chest. It hurts too much. Yan Ji has done so many tasks, but never suffered from such pain. The arrow was inserted into her heart, and if it had not been supported by her own soul source, the body would have died completely. The melon seeds are not stingy, and the chickens who are no longer chased by the palace dramas pull their wings and tails, like quails with shivering heads. During this time, it came over like this: let us not do this task. If you have done it, you will be sifted now. This is not just a task. Otherwise, we will not return the order. Yanj was too lazy to answer it, and of course, didn't have the energy to answer it. Although she is a tree that does not like to use her mind, she will be responsible to her host every time she enters the mission. She is a responsible tree and enters the plane. Her goal is to complete the mission. The trembling chicken cub trembled and jumped on its favorite squatting high stool the next moment. He stretched his neck and said to the song, "That guy is here, that guy is here." You said he saw. What expression will it look like before you die? Will it make up for you? This man must have come to collect Luo Ming's army. Would I tell you, you're done. How good it was if you entered the palace at first. You are innocent, and he probably vomits when he sees it. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 38. Yan Ji hasn't seen such a bird/beast, but she thinks of the bird/beast that eats her every time. She is relieved. The crow in the world is generally black. This kind of bird/beast dong is not something that ordinary people can guess. The chicken's voice continued tensely. The city gate is to be opened, and he comes out. The digger is really unusual. He can't when he is not wearing clothes. The armor is really cool. Words of song. So when she and Yuendi smashed before, the chick said that the so-called geeky system would automatically block children's inappropriate images. Could it be that it was fabricated? The chicken did not know if it had exposed itself / and its round eyes were all star eyes staring at the man coming out of the gate at the moment. It's so handsome. I forgot to check whether this is personal. Hey Muse, do you think it is possible that he is the same as me? Can I pry a corner? No problem at all. This wasn't her man. But are you sure you like men? She remembers that this guy is a male. The chicken rolled his eyes and couldn't understand the idea of Yanj. I like the difference between a man and a woman. If he is really the same as me, I must peel his skin and hang it on the wall every day. Speaking silently, plants and beasts are really not suitable for communication. She no longer talks to the chicken idiots, but instead focuses on Yuendi. The 50,000 soldiers and horses brought by Emperor Yuan from Dock City came from the city. The barbarian had been snoring and was retreating. The city gate was opened. Yuendi rushed out as soon as possible, and together with the crowd moved the Ming army who was pressing on Yanj. Each Ming army was shot into a sieve by Jian Yu, and there was almost no intact place on his body. It was shocking to watch. Yuendi shouted the name of Yanj. He grabbed these Ming family soldiers who could hardly see his face, and raised his heart in the air every time. But every time, there is hope for him. Yanj, Yanj, he shouted hurriedly, where are you? I'm here to pick you up. A hand, pinching his horns at this moment. He glanced down this hand, and saw that this blood-stained and mud-stained hand that could not see the original face was holding a copper coin. It's a song, it's someone he's thinking about. Yanj, he held Yanj's hand tightly, sorrowful and happy, and cried and laughed for a while, hey come, hey come. Great, he didn't come late, she is still alive, she is alive. He has gambled countless times in his life, and this time, he will remember it all his life. The joy, like the tide, had not swept Yuendi, and the soldiers who were pressed on Yanj were also moved away at this time. The first thing that entered Yuendi's eyes was Yanj's arrow in his chest. There were countless injuries on her body, her armor was blood-stained and she could not see the original color. She was pinched in one hand by his hand, and the other was placed on the abdomen. He really saw that the goggles on her chest were removed by her and placed on the abdomen. Yanj, Yanj. He held her in his arms carefully, don't be afraid, I'll take you to the royal doctor. He picked her up and ran towards the city gate, while shouting the doctor. His sleeves were dragged, his head bowed, and he looked a little slackly with Yanji. She grinned, as if trying to smile at him, but her chapped lips opened, and blood was flowing from her lips. Pray for peace, her voice fluttered softly, and she seemed to have a shallow breath, which made people not hear it, but the intangible breath came into his mind. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 39. Yuendi listened to her voice, and her tight heartstrings trembled, and it seemed that the strings would break in the next moment. He looked at her facial features stained with mud and blood, and his eyes were soft, and the wet liquid poured out and was forced down by him. He bowed his head and kissed her chapped lips, moisturizing her lips so that she would not crack like that. Don't talk. He said to her almost beggingly, don't talk, the royal doctor will come right away, you will be fine, Ayan, you will be fine. Anything, please tell me when you are fine. Her stingy, clouded eyes seemed to be staring at Yuendi. It seemed that after seeing who he was, her eyes became brighter and brighter, as if two torches were rising in the darkness and burning in the eyes. Pray for peace, she laughed suddenly, her voice came out of her chapped throat, and the dumb rough voice was broken, but her blood-stained face smiled very happily. Pray, is it a dream again? She reached out and tried to touch his face, but her hands were raised a few times and she couldn't raise her. When she noticed her movement, Yuendi busily held her hand tightly on his face. It's me, I'm here, Ayan, you haven't dreamed, it's me. She still laughed, and her chapped lips were full of blood leaking out of her face. There was nothing like the blood and mud on her face, only a pair of eyes, bright, staring at him without blinking. Come on, come quickly, she murmured, her smile gradually fixed on her face, and the fireworks in her eyes went out at this moment. I'm here, Ayan. Yuendi squeezed her hand tightly and hugged her carefully to a simple bed that the guards had just set up in the city gate, and greeted the doctor to step forward. Hurry up, come and see Ayan, and heal her injuries soon. The person who was seen by the imperial doctor on the bed was hugged by Yuendi in his arms, and he took a moment's attention, then carefully took the pulse of the words. Emperor Yuan held the man in his arms tightly and comforted, the royal doctor is here. Don't be afraid, Ayan will get better soon. On the next moment, the imperial doctor knelt down on the ground. Your Majesty. His voice was panicked and trembling, and said desperately, Your Majesty, General Ming is out of breath. Having finished speaking, without waiting for Yuendi's response, he completely kneeled on the ground with 5 bodies thrown into the ground. Your Majesty, General Ming has been out of breath for a long time. The next moment, he was kicked on the shoulder by Yuendi, and rolled one of his uncles to the door. If it weren't for holding the words, Yuendi would kill the quack doctor in front of himself. Quack doctor, Ayan is good, just talking to me, she will still look at me and laugh. You quack doctor, come, where is the medic in the army? The soldiers inside and outside the tent all knelt on the ground. It wasn't the military doctor who came in this time, but Song Ching. He knelt beside the bed and silently took the pulse. Yuandi squeezed Yan's hand tightly and still murmured, "Ian, don't be afraid, I'll take you back to the palace, we will take you back to the palace, we will find the best doctor, you will be fine." Song Ching heard that. He looked up at Yuandi in shock. Yuandi saw that he was just taking the pulse for his words, and he was dissatisfied and looked up at him and said, "Will you see an illness? Didn't you see that Yan's chest was hurt badly? If you cure General Ming, let me ask you one. The imperial doctor Dang Dang, if you dare to perfunctory, slap your 9 clan." In the end, a pair of eyes staring at Song Ching turned red, and his facial features were distorted and even darkened. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 40. Song Ching did not avoid the eyes of Emperor Yuan. Although his voice was low, he was extremely calm. "The general's body has always been for me to help her. The old general is very busy. The general is the one I see big. Last time she was injured, when I bandaged her, I found out she was pregnant." Yuandi's breath suffocated. Slightly hostile eyes towards Shang Song Ching were not only angry but disappeared, but also a little bit futile, like an ugly daughter-in-law seeing his in-laws helplessly. Fortunately, Song Ching glanced down at Yuandi just like this, looking at the song in Yuandi's arms, and said softly, "Your Majesty, she has passed away." After a pause, he added, "If she knew you were here, she would be very happy." Yuandi heard what he said, but he didn't feel praised at all. Instead, he felt more worried, as if there was something wrong. He pursed his lips and raised his chin slightly, and said to himself, "Of course Yan will be happy." He hugged Song Ching condescendingly, and the more he looked, the more angry he always felt. "Your Majesty," Song Ching bowed his head, and slowly said, "Your Majesty, the general is out of breath." "You help her unplug this arrow," Yuandi's dissatisfaction said again, "aren't you a medic? This arrow injury should not embarrass you, hurry up, there are so many injuries on Yan, why are you still there? To put it bluntly, I finally know why it is not pleasing to the eye to see this medic, because this guy is there like a wooden stake, and did not help Yan hurt." Yuandi frowned, grabbing Yanj with one hand, and placed his belly on Yanj's belly. There was a baby with him and Yanj in that place. He wanted to touch it, but his hand touched the hard heart. Mirror. Yanji has wounds all over his body, and every place is flesh and blood, cannot see the original skin, but only the abdomen is intact. She must be looking forward to this child, she must like this child very much, otherwise she won't protect her belly like this. When Yuandi saw Song Ching still not moving, he was so angry that he kicked his feet on Song Ching's chest. "Are you deaf? Let you bandage the wound to Yan, what are you rubbing against?" "Your Majesty," Song Ching knelt straight after he was knocked to the ground, and his hoarse voice was distraught, "Your Majesty, Ming Lan, she is out of breath, she is out of breath." Yuandi finally seemed to hear his voice. He was so angry that his forehead was blue and leaping, and he couldn't help but swear, "You fart, Yan just talked to you, you quack doctor, you quack doctor." He pointed at Song Ching angrily, and just about to call someone to pull this quack out and chopped it, but he looked slightly crying at Song Ching's face. Song Ching choked and said, "Your Majesty, look down at her yourself, she really has no breath." Yuandi's hand was tightly grasped on the goggles on her abdomen, and it took a long time to slowly lower her head. "Ian!" he shouted, his voice all choking on his throat. Her eyes were still wide, as if looking at him, but it seemed to be beyond him, looking forward to the distance, and there was a smile on her face, and the smile was mixed with the blood on her face, not brilliant, and only despair. Her eyes were full of blood, and a drop of blood made a mark along the corner of the eye. The blood had dried to black and red, and she was shocked. Her chapped lips opened slightly, and in his ear, it seemed as if she heard her murmur again, "Pray for peace, is it a dream?"